You drift in darkness older than memory. Out here between the stars, silence is not an absence. It is a presence. It presses gently, like the soft weight of deep water, steady and endless. In that quiet, there are wanderers, small, frozen relics moving through nothingness. One of them, a body of ice and dust called Three Eyes/Atlas, turns slowly an invisible current of space. It is a fragment of another sun, perhaps another time. No one knows what star once warmed it, or what gravity flung it free. All that remains are traces, a surface layer with ancient chemistry, a heart packed tight with frozen gases, and a long memory of exile. For millions of years, it has drifted alone, past clouds of hydrogen, between the faint fields of starlight, through zones where gravity itself seems to sleep. And then, without warning, it crosses a line. A pull, faint at first, begins to reach for it. That pull is our sun, a golden thread stretching across the void, almost too delicate to feel. Three Eyes/Atlas follows it unconsciously, the way a seed follows wind or a thought follows wonder. Soon, it begins to fall inward, toward warmth, toward attention. You watch this arrival from the comfort of your own small world, a planet bathed in familiar light. News travels fast among those who watch the heavens. A new object, a new interstellar visitor. Its name is both technical and poetic, a sequence of letters and numbers, but also a symbol of crossing of strangeness, of the unexpected guest. It joins a short list of travelers from other stars. One Eye/Oumuamua before it, and now this, Three Eyes/Atlas, a messenger of elsewhere. You imagine the cold that surrounds it. In the spaces between galaxies, heat is almost a myth. Atoms rarely meet. Temperatures hover just above absolute zero, where motion itself becomes shy. And yet, somehow, this body has endured, a capsule of minerals and frozen volatiles, carrying a chemistry older than Earth's oceans. Every flake of its ice holds stories from before our sun was born. As it nears the outer reaches of the solar system, the faintest sunlight begins to touch it. Each ray, traveling for 8 minutes from the sun to your eyes, has journeyed for billions of years across the universe before that. Now those same rays warm the comet's crust for the first time in ages. Tiny eruptions begin, almost imperceptible, molecules trembling, breaking free, becoming vapor. A faint mist forms, spreading like breath on cold glass. You picture this, a speck of light slowly growing a halo. It is not bright enough yet to catch a casual eye. But through telescopes, a glow appears, a pale greenish coma around a dark core. It drifts through the Oort cloud, past the realm of Neptune, crossing invisible borders that no map can mark. Each mile it travels is another note in a silent symphony that has been playing since before the Earth cooled. Astronomers take notice. They measure, compare, predict. They name its speed, chart its curve, estimate its age. But even through mathematics, there is awe. To see something that has come from beyond, unshaped by our sun's influence, is to touch a piece of the wider story, a reminder that our solar system is not an island, but a coastline on a vast, shared sea. You imagine being near it, watching it move, a world no larger than a mountain, gliding through emptiness at tens of kilometers per second. No sound, no wind, no vibration, only motion. Its path curves under the steady pull of gravity, bending gently toward the inner worlds. Behind it trails a faint ion tail, blue as twilight smoke. Ahead of it lies the brilliance of the sun, still distant but growing. If you could listen closely enough, what would it say? Perhaps nothing at all, or perhaps everything. Its atoms hum with the same frequencies as the elements in your blood. The carbon that gives your body structure, the oxygen that fills your lungs, the iron that colors your blood, all forged long ago in stars not unlike the one it once orbited. You and the comet share ancestry. You are both children of stellar fire, cooled by time and carried into being by chance. There's a deep comfort in that realization. You are not just watching something foreign. You are witnessing kinship across the abyss. Each comet, each grain of interstellar dust, carries pieces of the same cosmic fabric that once assembled into you. In this way, astronomy becomes intimate, not the study of distant lights, but a remembering of your own origin. As the days pass, Three Eyes/Atlas grows brighter. Its tail lengthens, its coma expands. Photons bounce from its surface and scatter into telescopes across the world. In observatories built on quiet mountaintops and in backyards under suburban skies, people lean into night and trace its slow arc. For most, it is just another comet. But for those who know the story, it is something far more rare, a visitor from the interstellar dark, moving through the golden field of our sun. You think of how long it has traveled to arrive here, how indifferent time has been to its loneliness. If you could measure patience, this object would define it. For millions of years, it has known nothing but motion and silence, until now, when light awakens it and gives it shape once more. Perhaps that is what the universe does again and again, awakens what sleeps, illuminates what drifts unseen, and lets each thing briefly burn before returning to the dark. You breathe slowly, imagining that distant light crossing space. The photons that left its icy surface will take hours to reach Earth. When they do, they will strike a mirror, an electronic sensor, or the back of someone's retina. In that moment, you'll be connected, not metaphorically but physically, by a stream of ancient sunlight reflected off alien ice. To observe is to participate in the unfolding of the cosmos. As you close your eyes, the comet continues its path inward. Its motion is simple, inevitable, graceful. It is not lost. It is merely passing through. A reminder that even the loneliest travelers are drawn, eventually, toward warmth. Somewhere ahead, sunlight brightens into heat. The ice will respond, first with a sigh, then with a flare. What begins as a whisper in the dark will soon become a burst of light, and you will wonder, quietly, what it means when something ancient finally begins to speak. The sun rises nowhere in space, yet its light reaches everywhere. For billions of kilometers, its rays spill outward, thin but unbroken, traveling through a darkness that does not resist them. Each photon is a message, small, tireless, ancient. Somewhere in that deep sea, those photons now touch a wanderer. 3I/Atlas, the interstellar visitor drifting toward the heart of our solar system. You imagine it turning slowly, its surface rough and uneven, patterned with cliffs of dust and ice. Every rotation brings new scars into the light, like pages turning in a frozen diary. The sun's warmth begins to draw out old memories. Atoms trapped since before your world formed begin to move again, to tremble, to escape. Light, the gentlest of forces, is awakening what cold had kept silent. It begins quietly. The way dawn begins, the way thought begins. No explosion, no visible drama. Only sunlight absorbed, translated into motion. On its darkened surface, molecules of carbon dioxide, ammonia, and methane stir as heat seeps inward. They expand, break free, and burst softly from fissures no larger than a breath. What was frozen becomes vapor. What was hidden becomes visible. You picture in slow motion a single grain of dust carried upward by a jet of vapor, catching sunlight like a mirror no bigger than a speck. It drifts away, turning, reflecting, glowing faintly green as it scatters the sun's energy into the emptiness. Thousands more follow, until a veil of light begins to surround the nucleus, a luminous halo called a coma. It is not the comet itself, but its atmosphere, born from the act of letting go. Astronomers on Earth begin to notice. Their telescopes, tuned to different kinds of light, visible, infrared, ultraviolet, collect the scattered photons that have journeyed back across space. Each wavelength tells a part of the story. Ultraviolet reveals molecules torn apart by sunlight. Infrared tells of dust warmed to a soft glow. Visible light traces the curve of the tail. To study a comet is to read sunlight in translation. You learn that nothing shines by itself. Everything that glows in the night sky is either burning or reflecting, releasing its own light or borrowing it from another. 3I/Atlas does the latter. It is not a star, not even a fire. It is a mirror, a small and ancient one, catching sunlight and reshaping it into a signature only our instruments can fully read. The patterns of brightness, the rhythms of reflection, the subtle color of the light, they all tell what the comet is made of, where it has been, and what it remembers. Through that reflection, astronomers begin to decode its story. Each photon that bounces from its surface carries with it a trace of chemical identity, an imprint of the atoms that absorbed and released it. By spreading the light into a spectrum, scientists can see fine lines of color missing or added, like a cosmic fingerprint. These are the spectral lines, delicate gaps in rainbows, each marking the presence of an element. From those gaps, they know carbon is there, oxygen too, even complex organic molecules, the building blocks of life. You pause at that thought. Something that formed beyond the reach of our sun carries the same chemical handwriting as the living cells in your body. It means that life, or at least its raw ingredients, are not confined to one world. They drift freely, patient as dust, waiting for the right warmth, the right gravity, the right chance. Perhaps, long ago, another comet like this one fell to Earth and released the first whispers of biology into its oceans. Light, then as now, was the midwife of beginnings. You return to the image of sunlight touching ice. It's not a violent meeting. It's patient, almost tender, photon after photon, landing like snowflakes in reverse. Each one transfers a little warmth, enough to loosen a bond, to stir a molecule. The comet's rotation exposes new regions to light, while others slip back into shadow. A slow dance of illumination and forgetting begins. Day and night pass in hours on its surface, but the process continues, steady as breath. You think of how light travels, in straight lines until interrupted, in silence until witnessed. It does not hurry. It does not fade with distance, only spreads thinner, gentler. When it finally finds a surface to touch, it gives all it has, an instant of energy, a glint, a possibility. In that way, light behaves like kindness, unstoppable, even when unseen, needing only a place to land. As Three Eyes / Atlas drifts nearer to the sun, the balance changes. The coma grows wider. The tail begins to stretch outward, always away from the light, shaped by the steady push of solar wind. That wind, a stream of charged particles flowing from the sun, interacts with the comet's gases, bending them into a luminous arc that spans millions of kilometers. What was once a quiet traveler becomes a spectacle of physics, a sculpture carved by light itself. From Earth, telescopes record the transformation in slow frames, hour by hour. You imagine those who watch. Scientists awake in the blue hours before dawn, adjusting focus, checking data, sipping coffee gone cold. They are not merely observing. They are listening. Every flicker, every brightening, every subtle pulse in the coma's glow is a syllable in the language of light. To see is to listen, and through that listening, a relationship deepens between human curiosity and the unfeeling vastness of space. You think of how fragile that connection is. A few particles of dust, a few beams of light, a handful of data points. Yet from such faint signals, entire histories unfold. Astronomy is the art of attention. It teaches patience, humility, and the power of small details. The universe rarely shouts. It whispers. To hear it, you must quiet your own noise. As the comet continues to brighten, the first public images begin to spread. Shimmering trails across the black, a faint emerald core. People all over the world look up, trying to see what scientists already know is there. They may not spot it with their eyes, but the thought of it, a traveler from another star now brushing sunlight, becomes a kind of shared dream. In that dream, you feel both small and infinite, part of the same geometry of motion and reflection. Light, you realize, is not only something that reveals a world. It is something that connects it. It travels between objects, between minds, between epochs. It tells the same story again and again, that nothing exists in total darkness forever. Even the loneliest traveler eventually finds a source to shine upon, and in that act of reflection becomes known. The astronomers will keep watching. The data will keep flowing. Each day, the light grows stronger, and with it, the mystery deepens. What happens when sunlight becomes too much? When the warmth that reveals also begins to transform? You close your eyes, and for a moment, you can almost feel it. The slow turning of light, the breath of awakening ice, the first tremor before brilliance. The visitor is not finished speaking. Its next word will not be reflected, but released. And soon, very soon, it will burst. Night deepens over the turning earth. The air cools, settles, and grows still. Far above the sleeping cities, on mountain tops and quiet plains, the watchers begin their work. They open domes shaped like eyes, each one designed to gaze without blinking. Inside, great mirrors wait, motionless, flawless, patient. You picture one of them standing in the desert, its dome glowing faintly under starlight. The metal frame creaks softly as it adjusts to the chill. Within, a beam of light from 3i/Atlas travels across unimaginable distance, through the thin breath of atmosphere, and lands on a curved mirror of glass. That light has traveled for millions of years through emptiness, yet it stops here, on the silvered surface of human curiosity. For a brief instant, the comet's reflection joins your world. To capture that light, everything must hold still. The telescope moves with the Earth's rotation, countering its spin so that the stars do not drift in its gaze. The instrument hum in a steady rhythm, motors aligning, lenses adjusting, sensors cooling to near absolute zero. The entire structure breathes in harmony with the planet beneath it. Observation, you realize, is not a passive act. It is a form of communion between motion and stillness. Inside the control room, a small team of scientists sits quietly, surrounded by monitors that glow like soft constellations. Their fingers move with practiced calm, adjusting exposure times, noting coordinates, watching as a faint image sharpens pixel by pixel. No one rushes. Astronomy does not reward haste. Here, time itself is stretched, one long inhalation of wonder. The first image appears, a grainy patch of darkness, threaded with a faint blur of light. That is 3i/Atlas, a streak of brightness against a velvet background of space. It looks almost insignificant, a whisper on the edge of vision. But hidden in that blur are stories, its motion, its brightness, its chemistry, its pulse. Every pixel holds meaning. To the untrained eye, it's only a smudge. To those who study the heavens, it's an unfolding dialogue between matter and mind. They measure the angle of the tail, the rate of brightening, the subtle shifts in color. With each night's observation, the comet reveals another line of its story, a slow disclosure written in the language of light. This is a telescope's dream, to transform silence into understanding. You imagine yourself among them, leaning close to the screen. The data feels alive, faint numbers translating into cosmic geography. It's humbling to know that you're not looking directly at the comet, but at the memory of its light. What you see is not the present but the past, photons that left its surface hours or days ago. The universe is always slightly behind itself, always sending echoes instead of immediacy. You begin to feel what astronomers call the long delay. It is the distance between cause and perception, between happening and knowing. Every act of observation is an act of patience. In that delay, you sense something profound, the awareness that to see the universe is to live within its afterglow. You're always catching up to the past, even as you move toward the future. Outside, wind brushes a dome. Clouds pass like ghosts across the stars, and the telescope pauses, waiting for the sky to clear. There is something sacred in this pause. The watchers sip coffee gone cold, speak in low tones, or simply sit in silence. The night sky above them is a living document, and they are its translators, working line by line under the dim light of their monitors. You think of the mirrors, smooth, curved, and silent. They are not windows, but instruments of transformation. They take scattered light, bend it, and bring it to a single point of clarity. Perhaps your own mind is a mirror like that, shaped by years, polished by questions. Try and bring the chaos of experience into focus. Both telescope and mind seek the same thing, a moment of coherence within infinite motion. When the sky clears, the work resumes. The sensors begin another exposure. Light from 3i/Atlas pours in again, faint, filtered, constant. The comet, still a distant traveler, now becomes a pattern of data, coordinates, magnitudes, wavelengths. Numbers fill the screens like constellations made of logic. But beneath those numbers lies the pulse of wonder, steady and warm. Astronomy, you realize, is not just a study of distant objects. It is a conversation between curiosity and existence. The universe does not answer in words, yet replies through brightness, through gravity, through time. Every image, every data point, is a response to the quiet question that all observers carry. What is out there, and what does it mean for us to see it? You feel a tenderness for those who stay awake through the long hours, translating cold light into meaning. They are dreamers who never sleep, builders of bridges between the seen and the unseen. In their discipline is something meditative, the act of waiting, of listening, of noticing small shifts that might otherwise go unseen. Science, at its deepest level, is not a struggle for control, but a practice of attention. It is a way of being awake in the universe. In one of the images, the comet's coma appears brighter than before. A subtle flare, a new curve in its tail, signs of growing activity. The astronomers murmur softly, their eyes bright despite the hour. They know that something is beginning to change. Light behaves differently when dust and gas erupt into space. The comet, once quiet, is beginning to speak in radiance. You watch as they compare notes, cross-check results, and send reports to observatories across the globe. In Chile, in Hawaii, in the Canary Islands, other telescopes join the dream, each one a mirror listening for light. Together they weave a network of awareness that spans continents. The planet itself becomes a single observing eye, turning with the comet as it moves across the stars. And you, though far away, feel part of this collective attention. The telescope's dream becomes your own, the wish to understand without disturbing, to see without taking, to be part of something vast without needing to own it. To observe, you realize, is an act of love. It is to say, I will be still long enough for you to show me who you are. The hours pass. Dawn begins to pale the horizon, soft and silver. The telescope's dome closes, sealing in the night's quiet revelations. Data will be analyzed later, turned into graphs and models. But for now, the scientists simply watch the last stars fade. Another night of patient seeing is complete. As sunlight spills across the desert, the telescope sleeps, a great eye folded in dream. Somewhere above, the comet keeps traveling, its light unchanged, its message ongoing. What it reveals next will come not through reflection, but through reaction, a sudden, brilliant burst. You feel the thought forming softly, like a whisper that has not yet found its words. What happens when the act of watching meets the moment of surprise? And in that unspoken question, the next chapter begins to glow. It begins quietly. No warning, no pattern, no hint from the long scrolls of data that fill astronomers' nights. One moment, the distant traveler, 3I/Atlas, moves as expected, a dim grain of reflected sunlight crossing the velvet dark. The next, the monitors whisper change. A spike, a flare, a sudden swelling of light. You imagine the observatory at that hour, midnight's edge, machines humming like steady breath. Screens glow in pale blue and green. Numbers cascade in silence until the algorithms gasp. The comet's light curve bends upward, sharp as a heartbeat. Something has woken within the ice. Perhaps it is sunlight, finally strong enough to reach some hidden cavern beneath the surface. Perhaps a pocket of ancient gas, carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, has found its first escape after millions of years sealed in glassy frost. Or perhaps something deeper, stranger, is stirring, a chemical conversation reigniting after the long sleep between the stars. You watch through imagination, not eyes. You picture fragments of dust flung outward, catching sunlight and blooming into a halo. The comet seems to breathe. Its coma grows, a mist made of time itself, exhaled into the solar wind. The telescopes capture it all, a slow, uncoiling radiance. Every photon becomes a messenger from the unknown. They scatter across sensors, becoming data, becoming wonder. You think of the human minds behind those instruments, how they lean closer to the light, searching for meaning. In their faces, reflected on the dark glass of computer screens, the universe sees itself trying to understand. It is not just light that bursts, it is curiosity, too. The scientists begin to measure, to compare, to question. Could this outburst mark the cracking of 3I/Atlas's surface? Could solar heat be carving channels through its crust? But another question lingers, softer and more difficult to hold. Whether this brightness is not only a reaction, but memory? For a comet is not merely a rock. It is a time capsule, a frozen library of the early solar system. When it bursts, it speaks of origins, You imagine each dust grain as a syllable of the ancient language of creation, hydrogen whispering of the Big Bang, carbon murmuring of life's seeds, water telling stories of the oceans yet to form. And now, the sun's warmth has turned the page. The outburst continues for hours, then days. The brightness waxes, wanes, and then stabilizes again. The object resumes its course, as if nothing unusual had happened. But something has changed. The astronomers know it. You know it too. Once something reveals that it can surprise you, you can never look at it the same way again. You imagine standing outside, beneath the quiet night. Above you, the stars burn with familiar constancy. But you know that in one corner of that vast sky, something unpredictable has happened. A story has shifted. It is comforting, somehow, to know that even in the cold perfection of physics, there are still moments that feel alive, moments that defy the smooth predictions of mathematics. Perhaps this is what keeps humanity watching the sky, not the certainty, but the chance of astonishment. You breathe in, as if to mirror the comet's sudden exhale. The universe feels less distant now. The flare, though light years away in metaphor, seems like an echo of your own quiet awakenings, those moments when something long buried within you cracks open and begins to shine. In that thought, the science becomes personal. Outbursts in space are not unlike those within the heart, a sudden remembrance, a release of pressure, a transformation from stillness to light. 3 I/Atlas, still traveling, carries on. The dust expands behind it, forming a faint, shifting tail. Through telescopes, it looks almost painterly, a slow brushstroke of white across the infinite canvas of night. Each grain of that dust will drift for centuries, perhaps longer, spreading the story of that single moment when it could no longer remain silent. Down on Earth, teams compare notes. They cross-check timing, brightness, direction. The flare is confirmed, cataloged, named. Yet behind the measured language of data lies something quieter, a shared awe. For all the machinery and mathematics, discovery always returns to emotion. You sense it, even from here, a collective breath held at the edge of comprehension. And yet, as the data settles into the archives, another mystery rises. The light of the burst fades. But something lingers around 3 I/Atlas that should not. Its tail is longer than expected, its core dimmer, its path subtly changed. The model strained to account for the shift. It is as though the comet has released not just material, but intention, a deviation, a quiet rebellion against trajectory. You close your eyes. You can almost feel the curve of its orbit like a sigh drawn through space. Smooth, deliberate, unknowable. It is not the first object to behave this way. Before it came Oumuamua, another interstellar wanderer that bent our predictions and left questions trailing in its wake. And now, this new one, the second known visitor from beyond, seems to hum the same strange tune. Coincidence, perhaps, or maybe the universe is whispering that it contains more kinds of stories than we can yet imagine. You picture that thought lingering in the dome of the telescope, floating among the dust motes and starlight. Somewhere, an astronomer turns off the instruments, sits back, and simply looks up. No calculations, no data, just wonder. Outside, the night deepens. The comet glows faintly, still shedding fragments of its past into the void. The burst has ended, but its echo continues, a thin, invisible thread woven to the vastness. And you, lying beneath the same stars, begin to feel the slow rhythm of discovery itself. It is not about answers. It is about attention, the patient listening for what the cosmos chooses to reveal next. Perhaps tomorrow another telescope will detect a change. Perhaps not. But tonight, you hold in your mind the image of something that flared once, briefly and possibly bright, and then went on, unchanged yet not the same. The instruments fall silent again, returning to their watch. The night resumes its endless breathing. And in that hush, you sense a question forming, soft, luminous, unfinished. What if the burst was not an accident at all, but a message written in light, waiting for you to notice? The night continues, but something inside it has changed. What was once only darkness now holds a quiet pulse, a reminder that light is never just light. It is movement, it is story, it is memory set free. The burst from Three Eyes/Atlas has ended, but its meaning drifts onward, spreading through electromagnetic whispers. You find yourself wondering what that flash truly was. To call an outburst feels too human, as if the comet lost its temper or broke a silence it meant to keep. But in the language of energy, nothing is truly sudden. Every flare, every spark, is the sum of countless small preparations. Heat building inside cold, tension gathering beneath calm. You imagine it now, a fragile body of ice and dust, passing into sunlight after millions of years spent in shadow. The heat seeps inward, slowly, persistently. Beneath the crust, volatile gases begin to stir. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, all locked away since the dawn of time. They wake, they move, they seek escape. A burst, then, is simply a breath. The comet exhales into space, and the sun catches its sigh, turning invisible gas into shining beauty. That is a language of energy, invisible motions that become visible grace. You let that thought settle, like snow melting into water. Energy does not shout. It murmurs. It trades places quietly. Heat for motion, motion for light, light for story. And in that exchange, the universe reveals its grammar. You picture a photon leaving the sun. It begins as a tremor deep within a nuclear furnace, a collision of hydrogen atoms, fusing into helium, releasing a fragment of radiance. That single photon will bounce and scatter through the dense layers of the sun for thousands of years before escaping. When it finally emerges, it travels across 93 million miles of space, silent, tireless, until it strikes the comet's icy surface. There, it meets an ancient molecule of frozen water. One touch is enough. The molecule quivers, then leaps free, its bonds loosening into vapor. That tiny transformation, from ice to vapor, from stillness to flight, is the language the universe speaks. Not words, not symbols, but change. Every reaction is a syllable, every release of light, a phrase. And if you listen long enough, you begin to understand. The cosmos is not a place, it is a conversation. You close your eyes and imagine drifting near the comet, weightless. The sun glows faintly through the fog of dust, painting everything in gold. You watch jets of vapor curl from the surface, twisting like slow smoke. They rise, drift, vanish, each one a thought, each one a breath. The energy that fuels them is old, unimaginably old. The atoms inside those molecules were forged in stars that died before our solar system began. The comet is not just a traveler. It is a survivor, carrying the ashes of vanished suns. When it bursts, it is those ancient stars speaking again through the grammar of chemistry and light. You realize softly that even silence has a physics. The comet's long dormancy was not absence. It was potential. Energy waits. Always. Even in the coldest vacuum, even in the emptiest dark, it gathers quietly, like a held breath before song. And when that energy releases, the universe listens. On Earth, scientists measured in numbers, joules, watts, wavelengths. They translate radiance into data and data into meaning. But you feel that there is another kind of understanding, the one that does not measure, only senses. You begin to see how this language of energy speaks not just through stars and comets, but through everything. The warmth of your skin, the glow of your thoughts, the tiny currents that cross the distance between neurons. All energy, all change, all motion seeking equilibrium, just as a comet seeks balance between light and shadow. It feels comforting to know you are part of the same syntax, made of the same verbs that drive galaxies. For a moment, you imagine how this looks from far away. A single comet glowing in sunlight, its gases forming an invisible bridge between stars. It is both fragile and eternal, both particle and wave. The burst was never a mistake. It was always meant to happen. And that, perhaps, is what beauty truly is. The moment when purpose and physics align, when something old remembers how to move again. The scientists begin to interpret the data from Three Eyes/Atlas's flare. Spectra revealed traces of cyanide, carbon monoxide, water, and other compounds. These lines of color, thin, bright streaks in the graphs, are the comet's fingerprints its ancient dialect. Each element sings at its own frequency, and together they create a cosmic chord. To you, it sounds like music, a melody older than sound itself. Light turned into rhythm, chemistry turned into song. It's humbling, you think, how matter and motion collaborate to make something so intricate, so alive. The comet's burst was not random, it was choreography, and the sun, patient as ever, was its silent partner in the dance. You realize that everything in the universe dances this way. Atoms vibrate, stars pulse, galaxies spin, and even you, breathing, thinking, are part of the same rhythm. Energy flows through you as it flows through everything. The same sunlight that melted the comet's ice also warms your skin and powers the cells in your eyes that see it. The connection feels endless. It is not just a comet, not just a distant traveler, but a reflection of your own existence. The constant balancing act between rest and motion, silence and expression. For a long while, you let that thought linger. The comet continues its path. Its tail grows faint, a whisper stretched across the dark. The burst energy disperses into the solar wind, traveling outward, scattering into the interstellar sea from which it once came. Energy never ends, it only transforms. What was once frozen gas becomes light. What was once light becomes story. What was once story becomes memory. You imagine the molecules still drifting, carrying traces of that moment. The burst, the sigh, the breath, across endless distances. Someday, perhaps, they will fall into another forming star, another world. The language will continue, reshaping itself, still speaking. And here, beneath your own sky, you feel that quiet conversation moving through you too, a dialogue of warmth, thought, and gravity. You breathe, the universe breathes back. For a moment, you are both the question and the answer. And just before sleep claims the edges of your awareness, another wonder stirs. If light is a language, who or what is listening? The heat has arrived. It moves slowly, almost tenderly, across the comet's frozen skin, a sunlight centuries in the making. What seems like destruction is, in truth, awakening. Beneath the crust, ice as old than the sun begin to stir. Molecules shift, crystals fracture, and trapped gases strain toward freedom. You sense it as a kind of memory resurfacing, the moment when silence turns into voice. This is how comets speak, not in language or sound, but in light released from their hidden hearts. Each burst is a whisper of ancient fire, retold through frozen time. You imagine the surface of Three Eyes / Atlas shimmering under the slow warmth of the sun. At first, it resists. For millions of years, it has known only cold, the kind that freezes not just matter but motion, the kind that stills everything except thought. But now, photons strike its surface like soft knocks at a door long sealed. Inside, crystalline lattices begin to tremble. The ice, once motionless, now remembers fluidity. To the human eye, it's a faint glimmer. To physics, it's transformation. Solid water turning into vapor, a quiet rebellion against inertia. But to imagination, it feels like emotion, like something long forgotten remembering how to move again. You think of memory as temperature. When we recall, we warm. When we forget, we cool. The comet, too, remembers through heat, sunlight thawing the frozen archives of its past. Each molecule that breaks free carries a story. Some are traces of carbon monoxide and methane, relics of distant nebulae where starlight first coaxed hydrogen and carbon into dance. Others are water molecules older than our oceans, formed before Earth existed. When they escape, they join sunlight and space dust, creating the comet's tail, a luminous signature written in ancient chemistry. You realize then, a comet's glow is its autobiography. Scientists call it sublimation, the direct shift from solid to gas, a kind of instantaneous remembering. No liquid phase, no hesitation, just release. It's nature's way of skipping the middle ground, of letting go without resistance. And in that moment, the boundary between heat and cold blurs, just as memory blurs into imagination. You can almost hear the comet sighing, not in grief, but in recognition. This warmth, though unfamiliar, feels destined. It is as if the sun and the comet share a private reunion, two old companions of the same cosmic lineage. For even the sun, you remember, was born from ice and fire alike, hydrogen clouds collapsing under gravity, fragments of frozen gas igniting into fusion. The comet is made of those same elements, only frozen instead of burning. Fire and ice are not opposites. They are phases of the same origin. That is what the comet teaches you now. To burn is to remember what once froze, and to freeze is to hold on to what once burned. You think about how memory works in your own mind, how moments, like icy fragments, lie dormant until warmed by attention. Then, with a gentle rise in inner temperature, they vaporize, expanding into thought, emotion, story. The act of remembering is not unlike sublimation. Something solid and still turning into something invisible, yet full of movement. And just as a comet loses part of itself with every pass near the sun, so too does memory reshape you, releasing, transforming, eroding what no longer needs to remain frozen. Still, the comet's release is not decay, it's expression. As jets of vapor burst through its crust, they form spirals and fans, intricate patterns sculpted by rotation and light. To scientists, these shapes reveal composition and spin. To you, they look like calligraphy, lines of light drawn across the black. You imagine those patterns as a comet's handwriting, each curve a signature of age and endurance. In this vast quiet, even erosion becomes art. As you watch from afar, or perhaps from a dream, you feel an echo of its transformation within yourself. You, too, carry memories older than words. The warmth of the sun on your skin, the chemical traces of starlight in your blood. Every atom in your body once drifted through a cosmic cloud like this. You are built from recycled fire and preserved ice. When you breathe, you participate in that same act of release, molecules entering and leaving, energy-shifting states. Breath itself is a daily sublimation, a rhythm of forgetting and remembering. Somewhere, deep in the comet's core, heat continues to seep inward. Each layer that softens reveals another archive of ancient time. Scientists believe that comets hold some of the earliest organic compounds, the building blocks of life itself. Amino acids, simple sugars, fragments of carbon chains, all preserved in the cryogenic stillness of interstellar space. Perhaps you think, when the comet bursts, it's not destruction but sharing. Perhaps it's scattering seeds. Each particle that escapes will wander to the solar wind, maybe land on a young planet, maybe to vanish into infinity. But some will join the long chemical conversation that began before Earth had oceans, the dialogue between matter and memory that eventually gave rise to you. You feel a deep stillness at that thought. The heat of one star reaches across the void and awakens an ancient traveler. The traveler, in turn, releases molecules that once belonged to that same star. A circle closes without sound. The cosmos, you realize, is not built of things, but of transformations. Nothing stays what it was. You look again at the comet, small, luminous, fragile, and see in its slow unraveling the essence of existence itself. Everything burning and freezing, releasing and remembering, all at once. For a moment, the image dissolves. The comet becomes less an object and more a feeling. The sensation of warmth meeting cold, of life remembering its origins. You close your eyes. Behind your eyelids, you can still see the faint line of its tail, a glowing thread that binds memory to movement. Maybe, you think, all fire is ice remembering light. Maybe all warmth is a return to something once forgotten. The comet continues onward, carving its path through the solar wind, leaving behind a ghostly trail of vapor and dust. Evidence of what it once held and what it chose to release. Somewhere ahead, the sun still shines, pulling it closer, inviting another layer of memory to awaken. You listen to the faint rhythm of sublimation, the slow, steady exhale of ancient molecules into present light. It feels like a pulse, quiet but alive, echoing the heartbeat of stars. And as the comet turns its illuminated face toward the sun, you sense the next mystery waiting. The sun's vast, silent gaze, patient and unblinking, watching every breath of this reunion. You wonder, what does the sun feel when its warmth touches forgotten? You drift closer to the center of everything. The sun fills half your sky, not as a burning sphere, but as an immense thought glowing in silence. Its light reaches you across millions of kilometers, steady, calm, unwavering. You imagine it breathing, not in the frantic way of lungs, but in vast waves of plasma, pulsing like the slow heart of time itself. The interstellar traveler, 3I/Atlas, glides through this domain, fragile and ancient. It is little more than a shard of memory, a frozen syllable from another system, crossing the bright threshold of the sun's dominion. And the sun, immense, indifferent, feels its passing only as a faint whisper in its gravitational field. The sun does not turn to look. It does not change its rhythm. And yet its invisible reach extends in all directions, bending the comet's path, guiding it gently through invisible corridors of attraction. You can almost feel that pull, the subtle command that keeps planets in their endless orbits, the same law that stirs tides on distant moons, the same gravity that holds you now to this quiet earth. You think of how the sun rules not through motion, but through stillness. It does not chase. It does not grasp. It simply is, and by being, it shapes all that surrounds it. Its calmness is its control. Its silence is its language. Around the comet, the solar wind flows, not wind as you know it, but stream of charged particles, constantly exhaled. Each particle travels outward, an emissary of the sun's breath. When these invisible travelers meet the comet's frozen body, they awaken it. The ice begins to warm, to boil, to speak. Jets of vapor rise and twist into space, sunlight scattering through them like threads of liquid fire. It is as if the sun asks no question, and yet everything answers. You watch this gentle exchange unfold. The comet, once silent, becomes luminous, not because it burns on its own, but because the sun reveals what was hidden inside it. The heat does not destroy. It transforms. You realize that memory, too, behaves this way. It can remain frozen for ages, and only under the right warmth does it return to light. Somewhere in the void between worlds, the solar wind curls like a melody, unseen but felt. Scientists on Earth listen to these subtle notes, magnetic fluctuations, radio waves, the hum of cosmic weather. Each variation tells a story about the sun's mood. Sometimes it is tranquil, sometimes it storms. But even its tempests are slow compared to human urgency. They last for days, even weeks, unfolding like the breath of a god. The sun's patience humbles you. Its reactions are measured in millennia. Its attention spans the whole solar system. You imagine standing on its surface, though there is no surface, only endless light, and feeling the constant eruption of particles beneath your feet, each explosion followed by a stillness deeper than any silence you've ever known. This is what balance means here. Creation and release, flare and calm, all in a rhythm too vast for hearts to comprehend. The comet, illuminated now, grows a shimmering tail, a river of light stretching millions of kilometers, pointing always away from the sun. You think of this as the sun's reply, not loud or angry, but graceful. It does not pull the comet toward itself. It lets it go, shaping its path without possession. There is something deeply human in that gesture, the quiet power of allowing. You understand now. Not all influence needs to be loud. Not every connection is a collision. The universe is full of subtle responses, invisible threads of attention. The sun's gravity does not demand notice, yet it binds everything in its reach. You look again at the comet's path. Its arc curves gently under the sun's pull, like a thought returning home. But this visit is brief. 3I/Atlas has come from beyond and will return beyond. It carries with it traces of the sun, charged dust, ions, photons, embedded like whispers in its frozen shell. When it leaves, it will not be the same. The encounter changes both imperceptibly but irrevocably. You wonder whether the sun remembers every visitor that passes close. Does it store them, somehow, in the patterns of its magnetic field? Does it keep a record in the swirls of its plasma, the way a pond remembers every ripple long after the stone is gone? Perhaps memory, on the scale of stars, is not something stored, but something lived. Each flare, each spark, each brief encounter with a traveler from the dark is absorbed into its ongoing light. The sun's identity is not fixed. It is constantly rewritten by the energy that flows through it. And maybe, in a smaller way, you are the same. Each thought that brushes the edge of your awareness, Each brief emotion that rises and fades leaves a mark, invisible, subtle, but lasting. You, too, are changed by every touch of energy, every warmth, every gravity that enters your life. The comet continues its journey, now past the point of closest approach. The sun's warmth begins to fade, and the ice starts to refreeze. Yet something lingers, a glow, a trace, a memory of contact. You watch as it drifts outward, its tail slowly dissolving into the darkness. It carries a fragment of the sun's calm, an imprint of its patience, like a message written in the slow language of light. In the stillness that follows, you sense another presence, faint, distant, but waiting. Beyond the reach of the sun's warmth lies the domain of cold once more. The interstellar medium, thin as a dream, begins to reclaim the traveler. Soon, the warmth will be only a memory, and the memory will cool into silence again. But something of the sun's voice will remain. Within the dust, within the frozen molecules, within a faint trace of magnetic touch that follows wherever gravity allows. You feel the transition before it happens, that soft shift from warmth to distance, from response to reflection. The sun remains behind, still glowing, still silent, still holding everything without holding on. As you drift with the comet toward the dark beyond, you begin to wonder, what does the cold remember the warmth that once reached it? And where does memory go when even the light lets go of it? You are back beneath Earth's quiet skies, though they do not feel so quiet now. Around you hums a world of signals, radio waves, microwaves, cosmic whispers. The air is filled with messages from every direction, most of them unheard, most of them not meant for ears. The hum of power lines, the pulse of satellites, the faint song of distant quasars, all travel together, overlapping like threads in an invisible fabric of sound. In a dim control room, computer screens flicker with data, long streams of numbers scrolling past like rain. This is what the sun's quiet response looks like when translated into human language. Graphs, frequencies, curves, small variations in amplitude. Yet, within those lines, something alive is speaking. You sit among the scientists who listen for meaning in the noise. Their patience resembles that of astronomers in monasteries of glass and metal. They do not wait for miracles, only for patterns. Each pulse from the deep sky is examined, cataloged, and cross-checked. Somewhere within the chaos, they believe, lies a soft trace of understanding. The instruments are sensitive enough to detect a whisper from across the solar system. They listen to the solar wind, to the electric heartbeat of the sun itself. Every few seconds, a fluctuation appears, a blip, a rise, a fall, and each one might be the start of revelation or merely the breath of cosmic randomness. You realize how similar this is to thought itself. Your own mind, too, is filled with static, endless fragments, unfinished sentences, half-remembered dreams. Yet within that noise, patterns emerge, moment of insight, flashes of clarity. Listening is an act of faith, in science and in consciousness. One of the researchers leans closer to the screen. There, again, a repeating signal, faint but steady. The same frequency appears across multiple instruments, as if something out there, far beyond the planets, is rhythmically brushing the edge of perception. It could be an echo of the comet, now far from the sun, releasing brief bursts of ions as it spins. Or perhaps it is something deeper, something hidden in the long reach of interstellar wind. The excitement in the room grows, but quietly. No one shouts. These scientists have learned that discovery begins in silence. The data must be coaxed, not forced. Too much expectation can distort what is real. You watch as algorithms hum in the background, filtering interference from Earth's own noise, removing the static of radar, the chatter of satellites, the invisible waves of Wi-Fi that fill the air. What remains is cosmic sound, pure, ancient, and uncertain. There's a rhythm to the search. Record, filter, listen, again and again. It's like meditation, steady breathing, long patience, trust in what might be revealed. You close your eyes for a moment, beneath the hum of electronics. You can almost sense the universe breathing. Space is not empty, you remember. It is a sea of vibrations, electromagnetic, gravitational, quantum. Each movement, each shift in energy, is a form of communication. Everything is always talking to everything else. But the language is not words. It is frequency, amplitude, resonance, the grammar of existence. The signal strengthens slightly over the next few hours. It repeats, not perfectly, but enough to feel deliberate. The scientists map its shape, its rhythm, its intervals. Could this be the comet's final echo, a reflection of sunlight modulated by its tumbling motion? Or something in the interstellar medium amplifying its faint breath? Every hypothesis is tested with care. Every pattern is doubted before it is believed. That is the beauty of science. It listens without presumption. You think about how the mind mirrors this method. In the midst of emotional noise, it too searches for steady pulses, for meaning in confusion. Perhaps, like these instruments, you must learn to filter gently, to separate what matters from what merely hums. Outside the observatory, night deepens. The stars look the same as they did before, but you know they are not silent. Their light is a signal from the past, an ongoing transmission of history, encoded in brightness and spectrum. Each star hums at its own frequency, and the space between them is not still, but alive with interference. You imagine Earth itself as a listening body, its magnetic field vibrating, its atmosphere resonating with invisible waves. The planet listens to the sun listens to the galaxy, and the galaxy, perhaps, listens to something greater still. Back inside, the team overlays the data on a temporal scale. The pulse matches a rotation, the exact period when 3i/Atlas last faced the sun. The timing feels too precise to be random. The comet, now drifting outward into the dark, still carries within it a rhythm born from the solar wind. Its motion becomes music, inaudible but measurable. You feel a strange tenderness toward it, that distant traveler, still humming softly as it leaves. Its pulse reminds you that nothing ever departs entirely. Every interaction leaves an echo. Every warmth leaves a residue of motion. And so, in the hum of electronics and cosmic noise, you begin to hear a different kind of silence, not the absence of sound, but the fullness of listening. The scientists record the data, archive it, and begin to model its decay. They know the signal will fade. Everything does. But before it vanishes, it tells them something simple, almost poetic, that the universe responds, not with words, but with continuity. The noise was never just noise. It was a background of being itself. The hum of atoms, the whisper of starlight, the static of existence. You remember the sun's quiet response, its calm gravity, its patient warmth. This, you realize, is the other side of that conversation. The sun speaks, Earth listens. Light departs, data arrives. One half of the universe breathes out, and the other breathes in. The screens dim to black. The room grows still. Somewhere beyond all this equipment, the comet continues to move, faint and free. It is no longer visible to telescopes, yet its pattern lingers in the minds of those who watched. Perhaps listening is a form of remembering, not capturing, but allowing the echo to live on within you. You step outside and lift your gaze toward the sky. The night feels different now, as if full of unspoken meaning. The stars flicker faintly through the atmosphere's soft blur. They remind you that even in silence, the universe never stops speaking. And you begin to wonder, if all this noise hides a pattern, what other songs might still be waiting there, patient and unheard, beneath the static of the world? Discovery, you realize, is not a moment. It is a slow unfolding, like dawn seen from behind a mountain. The light arrives first as suggestion, not certainty. It spills softly across the unknown, revealing edges, not answers. You can never see everything at once. You can only glimpse, infer, imagine, and keep walking toward what seems to glow. The scientists have been studying the repeating signal for weeks now. The hum that once seemed random has resolved into something too orderly to ignore. Its pulse shifts with the comet's position, but not exactly as the models predict. Some parameters, the brightness, the frequency modulation, the subtle tailward delay, resist explanation. It's not that they contradict physics. They just do not fit comfortably within it. You sit at the edge of a long table surrounded by tired faces and open laptops. Equations fill the whiteboard like constellations, scattered but connected. The room feels hushed, reverent, as though each person knows they're standing close to something vast. But vastness, you've learned, is not always comforting. It asks for humility, for endurance. You watch them test theory after theory, thermal venting, plasma oscillation, ionized debris fields. Each hypothesis feels almost right, almost complete. Yet each one breaks against the small facts, the stubborn irregularities that make the data so alive. This is what science truly is. Not the clean, finished answers in textbooks, but the trembling between what is known and what resists knowing, the discomfort of almost understanding. You feel the tension in the room, not frustration exactly, but a quiet weight. Everyone senses the same thing. Something new is speaking, and no one yet knows the language. You think of the comet itself, that wandering archive of frozen molecules. It carries within it the chemistry of forgotten stars. When it burst near the sun, perhaps it did more than release gas and dust. Perhaps it translated its own memory into light, a message written not in words, but in patterns of energy. You close your eyes and imagine the comet spinning in darkness, trailing its luminous tail like a signature on the solar wind. Each turn, each glint, becomes a syllable. The universe writes slowly, you think. Outside the observatory, night is calm. The hum of machines blends with the hum of the earth. Insects, faint breezes, the far-off oceanic whisper wind against mountain stone. You listen to it all and realize that even silence carries information. There is no emptiness here, only layers of meaning waiting to be translated. One of the younger researchers, eyes bright despite the hour, leans forward and says softly, "What if we're looking at a reaction, not a cause?" The room stirs. You can feel everyone recalibrating their thoughts. Perhaps the comet isn't creating the signal, but responding to something, echoing, like a tuning fork struck by a hidden note. The idea lingers, fragile and thrilling, because if the comet is echoing, then something else must be calling. You feel your pulse slow. The mind resists such thoughts, but wonder does not. Wonder opens every door. Discovery, you think, is not about possession. It's about relationship. Each new thing you find changes how you see yourself. The more the universe reveals, the smaller, and yet more luminous, you feel within it. Back at the monitors, simulations run through the night. The data shifts as the models evolve, and with each iteration, the picture grows more intricate. You learn that scientific progress is not a straight line. It spirals, revisiting old questions from higher ground. Each rotation brings you closer, yet never quite to the center. You remember how, as a child, you once stared at the night sky and believed every star was a question. Now, surrounded by graphs and algorithms, you realize that belief was true in a way more profound than you knew. The cosmos doesn't give answers freely. It hands you riddles, glowing softly, and waits to see how you'll hold them. You think of all the weight that comes with discovery, not just equations or data, but the responsibility. To know something new is to change what others know. Knowledge radiates outward like light, and once released, it cannot be gathered again. That is the burden. To ensure that what you uncover illuminates rather than blinds. The lead scientist speaks quietly, almost like confession. If this pattern holds, we'll have to rethink part of our solar wind model. No one celebrates. Instead, they nod, acknowledging the gravity of that sentence. To rethink something that has felt certain is both exciting and heavy. You sense that the burden of discovery is also the burden of unlearning. To make space for truth, something old must dissolve. Outside, the first hint of dawn touches the horizon. Faint silver, slow. You step out and breathe the cold air. The world feels balanced on the edge of transformation, as though the universe itself has paused to listen. In that stillness, you understand something simple yet immense. Discovery isn't about adding to what exists. It's about aligning with it. You aren't creating truth. You're noticing it, gently peeling back the layers that hide it from view. The scientists inside continue their work, mapping, correlating, checking noise against signal. Their patience feels like devotion. And maybe it is. To dedicate your life to the careful listening of a universe is to practice a form of reverence. You look up again at the sky, knowing the comet is already too far to see. Yet it remains in data and memory, in equations still unresolved. Its faint echo has left an imprint on your mind. You can almost feel its presence, a soft pressure in thought, like a fingertip against glass. You realize that knowledge and mystery are not opposites. They are partners in an endless dance, circling one another through every age. The more you know, the more you are reminded of how infinite the unknown remains. You return inside. The screens now display overlapping waveforms, the new model beginning to make sense of the unmodeled. The scientists exchange glances that hold both exhaustion and quiet awe. The room feels sacred, though no one says it aloud. You breathe in, slowly, feeling the weight and the wonder of it all. To seek truth, you think, is to carry a light that also casts a shadow. The comet's data continues to stream faintly across space, and you imagine it whispering as it goes, a reminder that even fleeting things can leave lasting questions behind. You sit in silence, watching the endless scroll of numbers. Each one is a fragment of reality, a small bead of meaning in a long string. And somewhere deep within that sequence, you sense the beginning of another mystery, a whisper not yet recognized, a pattern waiting to be heard. There's a peace that comes after discovery, not the peace of certainty, but the quiet that follows a long breath. You looked into the unknown and found that it looks back with softness, not malice. The comet has already passed its moment of brilliance. Its burst has faded into faint data points and trailing light. Yet something lingers, like the echo of a song you can't stop hearing. You think about prediction, that great human comfort, the ability to say what will happen next. For centuries, we have built our faith in equations, in patterns, in the geometry of expectation. From the swing of a pendulum to the dance of planets, prediction has been our way of turning chaos into calm. To predict is to draw a line through time and trust that it will hold. But sometimes the line bends. 3I/Atlas did not do what was expected. Its burst came unannounced, unmodeled, and uninvited, a spark that reminded you how thin the veil of foresight really is. The scientists had run simulations, refined albedos, adjusted orbits, recalibrated instruments. Still, the light arrived on its own terms. You imagine prediction as a kind of music, rhythm and recurrence, the melody of cause and effect. The comet's outburst was a discordant note in that song, not wrong, but different. And in that difference, you hear the deeper harmony of the cosmos. That unpredictability is not a flaw, but a feature of everything that breathes, burns, and becomes. In the observatory, the air feels lighter now. The tension of explanation has given way to reflection. One scientist leans back and murmurs, "It's humbling, isn't it?" You nod without speaking. Humility, yes. The word feels right. For in truth, prediction is never about the future. It's about comfort in the present. It soothes the restless mind, offering a sense of control over what is too large to grasp. Yet control, you realize, is a mirage, beautiful but dissolving upon touch. The comet continues its journey outward, retreating into the black quiet between stars. Its light fades into background noise, its data archived, its mystery not fully solved. But that's the point, isn't it? If the universe could be entirely predicted, it would no longer be alive. You think of stars, massive furnaces burning with equations written in plasma. Even they, with all their predictability, harbor chaos inside. Convection zones, magnetic storms, sudden flares. Order and disorder are not opposites. They are companions, woven into the same cosmic cloth. Perhaps, you muse, the universe is less a machine and more a mind, vast, patient, and curious, not bound to repeat, but to evolve. Its unpredictability is the sign of its creativity. You close your eyes and imagine the comet's birth. Far away, in another system, long before our sun was born. Dust and ice gathered around an unseen center, compacting under cold gravity. In that moment, the seeds of its unpredictability were sown. Every collision, every stray photon, every vibration altered its path. By the time it reached us, billions of years later, it was already a story rewritten countless times. Prediction tries to freeze the flow of that story, to say this is how it will go. But the cosmos resists freezing. It moves, and with every movement, it changes. You open your eyes. The monitors hum softly, displaying simulations of what's next. trajectories, energy dispersions, possible tail fragmentation. The curves are elegant, but you no longer look for perfection in them. You look for grace, the grace of an evolving truth. Science, at its heart, is not about control but communion. It's a way of listening, of participating in the unfolding. Prediction is one voice in that dialogue. Surprise is the other. Each keeps the conversation alive. You think of weather, of atoms, of consciousness itself, all systems of infinite variables. None can be predicted completely, not because they lack order, but because they hold too much of it. Complexity is a kind of abundance. Every particle keeps a secret. Every orbit hums with forgotten possibilities. A single grain of dust from 3I/Atlas may still float through the solar wind, carrying isotopes that hint at origins beyond imagination. That, too, was unpredictable. Yet it's here, perhaps even falling toward Earth, a messenger from the unforecastable. You breathe deeply, letting the thoughts settle. To live in a universe beyond prediction is to live in wonder's natural home. For a long time, humanity believed that to understand meant to dominate. But the more you learn, the more you see that understanding is participation, a shared rhythm, not a conquered one. The sun doesn't control the comet. It invites it. Gravity is not command, but conversation. You recall how the burst first appeared. Sudden, luminous, impossible. You felt fear, then awe, then calm. That sequence mirrors the journey of learning itself. The movement from shock to acceptance to appreciation. Prediction would have skipped the first two steps. Unpredictability makes us feel alive. Outside, night deepens. Clouds drift like breath across the sky. Somewhere beyond them, invisible now, the comet moves silently into the dark. It carries no memory of its own surprise, no sense of being studied. It simply is, responding to sunlight, whispering through plasma, following invisible threads of gravity. And you are part of that same weave. You cannot predict your own next thought, yet it comes shaped by the moment, the memory, the mystery. You are, in a way, a microcosm of cosmic unpredictability, a consciousness formed by chance encounters of matter and energy, still unfolding in patterns no algorithm can forecast. Perhaps that's why the comet's burst moved you so deeply. It reminded you that life itself is a kind of cosmic improvisation, a melody that knows no sheet music, yet keeps perfect time. The observatory grows quieter as screens dim. The last calculations finish running. There will be papers, models, hypotheses, debates. But tonight, you need none of that. You need only this, the knowing that not knowing is sacred. You walk outside again, feeling the cool air wrap around you. The earth spins gently beneath your feet, a planet predicting its own sunrise, yet always surprised by its beauty. Above, the sky seems infinite, not because it stretches outward, but because it never stops changing. You think of all the predictions that have ever been wrong, and how each failure has brought us closer to truth. The universe hides nothing out of cruelty, only because revelation takes time. A meteor streaks faintly overhead, burning for a second and gone. You smile. Even this, perhaps, is a fragment of 3I/Atlas, ending its long unpredictability in a brief flare of grace. You whisper a quiet thank you to the comet, to the scientists, to the vastness that keeps surprising you. The night answers with silence, which somehow feels like understanding. You close your eyes and rest in the thought that the universe doesn't need to be predicted, only met, moment by moment, with curiosity and care. And as you breathe beneath the endless turning sky, you sense another question beginning to form. Not about what the universe would do next, but about how deeply you are already part of it. It begins quietly, the way all endings do. The comet drifts outward, past the reach of the inner planets, where sunlight grows pale and slow. Its tail, once bright with the heat of approach, now thins into an almost invisible filament of dust. You imagine it like breath fading in cold air, still there but dissolving. The instruments track its retreat in diminishing digits. Each night, the signal grows softer, until even silence seems louder than its presence. You sit before the screen, where the last images of 3I/Atlas still shimmer in pixels. The comet has crossed beyond Mars's orbit now, into that widening gulf where radiation hums and gravity begins to whisper instead of pull. The data comes slower, weaker, as though the universe itself is learning to let go. To watch a thing leave is to measure time differently. You are no longer counting seconds or coordinates. You are counting distance, brightness, absence. The tail becomes memory stretched thin across vacuum, a thread connecting what once burned near the sun to what will drift into the dark between stars. This is how comets end, not with collapse but with dispersal. Their fragments dissolve into dust that becomes something else, part of new clouds, new beginnings. Each loss is a translation, not an erasure. You think of ancient astronomers who once feared comets as omens. They saw light appear and fade, and they called a warning. But perhaps it was always an invitation to notice impermanence and feel the beauty in its passing. You take a deep breath, imagining the frozen nucleus gliding through the void. It carries within it ancient ices older than the sun, bits of chemistry that predate memory itself. Somewhere inside that small, dark body are atoms that once drifted to the birth cloud of the Milky Way. Every orbit, every encounter with starlight, rewrites its surface, a slow story of fire and sleep, awakening and retreat. Now it sleeps again. The solar wind continues to push faint ions off its back, forming a pale ribbon that glows just enough for distant instruments to see. You picture like a lantern receding into fog, leaving behind not darkness but question. What else moves unseen beyond our instruments, beyond even our wonder? Discovery always ends this way, with both closure and ache. You realize that 3I/Atlas was never yours to keep. It passed briefly through your system, left a mark on your imagination, and kept going. The universe does not pause for human curiosity. It flows unhurried, toward equilibrium. What we call goodbye, nature calls continuation. Still, you linger. Scientists do too. They write their final reports, archive their data, and let the comet go. The folders close, but somewhere in those graphs and curves lies a trace that will be revisited, maybe decades later, when another interstellar visitor enters our sky. Each one teaches us how to listen better, how to ask questions that endure longer than answers. You remember the first detection, how excitement surged across the community, like a shared heartbeat. Telescopes turned in unison, minds aligned across continents. For a brief moment, human attention became a kind of gravity, holding focus on a single traveler from another star. That, too, is beautiful, the way collective curiosity can become its own kind of force. But now that focus relaxes. Instruments turn back to nearer worlds. The hum of research resumes its normal rhythm. Only you remain awake a little longer, gazing at the final light curve. The pattern is still there, small dips, faint irregularities unresolved. Questions left open like unfinished sentences. Maybe the brightness varied because of rotation, maybe because of jets of vapor, or maybe because something about its structure defied what we thought comets could be. The truth may remain out there, unspoken, traveling beyond reach. You realize that mystery is not failure, it is continuity. Science, at its heart, is not about owning answers but keeping questions alive. Each discovery leaves behind seeds of new uncertainty, and those grow best in the fertile quiet after the data fades. You find peace in that rhythm, discovery, doubt, renewal, a pulse as steady as orbit itself. Outside, the night has grown deep. The sky above your window is clear, faintly powdered with winter stars. Somewhere out there, far beyond where light travels easily, 3I/Atlas is becoming smaller than thought. But you can still feel its trace, not through sight, but through attention, that inward light that remembers without needing proof. You think of Voyager, still sending whispers from the edge. You think of light that left distant galaxies before there were even eyes to see it. In every instance, the act of observing becomes a gesture of belonging. You watch the comet, and in return, it reminded you that everything passing to the cosmos leaves an echo, not in matter alone, but in meaning. Perhaps that is what science truly seeks, not permanence, but resonance. Not the frozen certainty of an answer, but the quiet continuity of wonder. You close your eyes. The comet continues onward, indifferent yet profound. You imagine it brushing the faint boundary of the heliosphere, where the sun's wind finally yields to the galactic tide. Beyond that invisible border lies freedom, or perhaps simply another kind of silence. The last data transmission comes in like a sigh. The numbers taper, the noise rises, and then nothing. But you do not feel loss. You feel participation. You are part of its brief dialogue with the sun, part of its reflection in your own thought. Even as it disappears, it leaves behind the gentle conviction that not all departures are endings. Some are openings, doorways into new kinds of perception. And so you wait, quietly, with that strange blend of closure and anticipation. Another traveler will come, someday. Another question will glow faintly against the dark. The story will begin again, different form, same longing. For now, you let the silence settle around you, vast and tender. The data rests. The night holds its breath. You understand that even goodbyes in space are not finite. They stretch, curve, and echo back through time. Somewhere in that curve, you sense the beginning of another chapter, a return not of objects, but of thought, a reminder that every departure carves space for what might one day arrive. The night feels different now, emptier but alive. The telescopes stand still beneath the cooling air, their domes close like eyes at rest. Screens fade to black, instruments hum faintly in standby, and yet you can feel something still happening beyond the silence. The data may have stopped flowing, but the cosmos has not stopped speaking. Its voice is simply quieter now, a murmur below human hearing, still weaving through the dark. You lean back and listen in your own way. The sound of the wind against the observatory dome mimics the hiss of cosmic background noise. You imagine radio telescopes somewhere across the planet still turned toward the sky, gathering signals that drift through space like echoes of forgotten music. Each frequency carries a story. Radiation from early hydrogen, pulses from spinning neutron stars, flashes from merging black holes. The sky, if you could truly hear it, would be a symphony of time itself. The universe never really sleeps. Even now, while you rest, the Milky Way turns, stars age, planets orbit. The cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, continues to wash through space, a sea of photons left over from creation. Every second, trillions of them pass through you, without resistance, invisible yet constant. You are, in this moment, literally bathed in the oldest light there is. That realization calms you. The world feels softer when you think of it as part of a long, continuous hum. Every life, every heartbeat, is a note within that cosmic chord. You are both listener and participant, tuning yourself to the universe's quiet persistence. Somewhere, deep in the dark, something moves again. Another object, maybe a comet, maybe something stranger, crosses a boundary of our awareness. Telescopes catch the first hint. A deviation in orbit, a flicker of light. Scientists will soon notice, as they always do, and begin again the gentle work of listening. That's how discovery unfolds, not through conquest, but through patience. You wait, and the universe answers in its own time. You think of those who first turned their ears to the cosmos. In the 1960s, radio astronomers detected a mysterious hiss that would not fade. At first, they thought it was noise, interference, perhaps from a pigeon nest in the antenna. But when they cleaned it away, the sound remained, steady, perfect, everywhere. It was the whisper of the universe itself, the afterglow of creation, the cosmic microwave background. A message, not written in words, but in warmth. Since then, that whisper has guided countless discoveries. From it, scientists have mapped the shape of space, the age of time, the very seeds of galaxies. A faint murmur, once mistaken for static, turned out to be the oldest truth we've ever heard. You smile softly, realizing how often the universe speaks in whispers we call noise, how often meaning hides within the faintest signals. You wonder if 3I/Atlas, too, carried some message not yet understood, some subtle pattern buried in the fading data. Perhaps the language of space is not one of symbols, but of rhythm, brightness and dimming, silence and flare. The pause is just as important as the sounds. In the quiet of your mind, you begin to translate. The comet's passing becomes a sentence, the sun's light a question, the solar wind a breath. You begin to hear structure in the seeming chaos, as though the entire cosmos were reciting a story too vast for a single lifetime to comprehend. Every event, every birth of a star, every evaporation of a black hole adds a syllable to that grand narrative. The wonder of it is not that you understand, but that you can listen at all. To be aware, to observe, is to participate in the act of cosmic storytelling. The photons that touch your eyes tonight began their journey long before human language, long before thought itself. They traveled billions of years to arrive, and in that arrival, you find connection, a reminder that even light, moving endlessly outward, sometimes finds a home. You close your eyes. Inside your mind, the data returns, not as graphs or equations, but as images. Dust streams like silver rivers. Magnetic fields curve like invisible architecture. The comet glows faintly, suspended in slow motion. You drift through its tail once more, surrounded by the ghosts of ancient elements, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, all tracing back to stars that died so new ones could be born. You realize that everything you see and everything you are once whispered in the same language of light. The word listening begins to change meaning for you. It becomes less about hearing, more about being receptive, open, still attuned. The astronomers on Earth are listening through machines. You are listening through wonder. Both forms are necessary. Both create harmony between human curiosity and cosmic vastness. And in that harmony, something stirs, a recognition. Maybe the universe does not simply exist to be studied. Maybe it listens back. The thought arrives quietly, almost playfully, like an echo returned across a canyon. What if consciousness itself is part of the universe's feedback loop, its way of becoming aware of its own creation? You, looking upward, are the cosmos observing itself, remembering itself. The whisper you hear is not foreign. It's familiar. Outside, dawn begins to tint the horizon. The stars grow fainter. The Milky Way dissolves into blue. The instruments will soon awaken for another cycle of observation, another night of patient attention. You feel grateful, not because you know everything, but because the unknown continues to invite you. Science, you realize, is not an act of possession. It is a form of listening with devotion, a prayer without words, repeated each time someone points a telescope toward the sky and waits. You open your eyes one last time before sleep. The screen beside you shows the last data file from the night, a low hum of background radiation. Nothing unusual, nothing spectacular, but you linger on it anyway, because within that hum lies everything that ever was. The first fire, the first atoms, the long echo of existence continuing through every living thing. You take a deep breath. The hum softens into silence. But even that silence feels full, charged with potential, with beginnings still forming somewhere in the dark. Perhaps, you think, the universe is still whispering, not in the language of stars or particles, but in the rhythm of discovery itself, the slow unfolding of awareness that keeps you listening, keeps you dreaming, and maybe, just beyond hearing, another story is already taking shape. Another signal is crossing the cold, patient distances, seeking someone, anyone, ready to listen again,